Amanda,
And I'm Mel.
and this is the Road Back Home podcast. Hiya, Mel. Welcome back.
Oh my God. Hi, how are you? Sorry. It's just one of my
Well,
many personas.
I missed you last week. Even though I had my very dear friend Tammy on the podcast, and I was delighted to bring
Mhm.
Tammy's voice to the conversation. Um, but did you feel missed?
I had terrible FOMO.
What we were just saying before we hit record, though, is
Mhm.
that, we're proud of ourselves for kind of like just being flexible enough to let it, for it not to have to be you and me all the time in terms of like if
Yes.
you were dealing with some life stuff, you needed the
Mhm.
space and it wasn't a problem.
It wasn't a problem. And it's important as we navigate, everything that we're discussing to bring in other voices. I think we're at that point where, we have kind of set this lovely base, to bring people on board and talk from their perspective. Let's bring in all the perspectives.
Yes, yes, I have some interesting people lined up for this, and I'm really excited to introduce them to their voices to the conversation. So, we are talking today about something that is very an interesting one for us because it is about happiness and how we have defined, or at least how I have defined happiness over the years. And the reason it is a kind of an ironic topic for us is that we are daughters of a comedian,
Mhm.
and our like happiness is pretty much has been our family brand for so long, and um, and I know that myself, I've had to really look at it over the last year or so of like what is happiness, because all the things that I have thought over the years that should make me happy or would make me happy weren't necessarily it. And so how I've just defined happiness is not as a kind of a shallow fleeting feeling, but it's a kind of a result of living in alignment, living with a sense of peace, being able to access joy, not in the absence of challenges, but despite life's challenges. It's
Mhm.
about, you know, having the kind of life or building the kind of life where you feel content, where you feel connected. And so I'm very conscious about defining happiness not as this unrealistic ideal, this kind of like everything is fine, I'm always happy and laughing, but more
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
kind of an inner resilience that allows us to access
Mhm.
happiness,
See the way
you
you
know?
use the word content there, right?
Yeah,
For
yeah.
me, I prefer the word content. Content
Mm,
feels more internalized for me. Happy feels external in ways, or it kind of, for me, it feels like happy for me is like almost rather than feeling it myself, giving it to others and then mistakenly identifying that as happiness for myself, right? And
mm.
that's, exhaustive, trying to do that all the time. When I sit my kids like in circle time and we're like, let's talk about emotions today. And, how are you feeling? And most of the kids just, default to happy. But their face sometimes, doesn't always look happy. But it tells me that it's an expectation that is
Yes.
put on us from a very young age,
Oh, yes. I'm supposed
right?
to be
These are
happy.
these are 4 year olds I'm talking about in my beginner class who, and I give them a whole list. But when one of them says happy and the whole group kind of responds to that, like, they see that as, oh, that has gained them, some sort of attention, or, you know, it feels good. So I'll just
Mm.
choose that as well.
It's almost like happiness is performative.
Well, yes. And especially in my case, it very much is.
Yeah,
That's
that's
that's why
such
the
an
word
interesting.
that's why the word content is something that
Mm.
just feels more internal for me. Like if I'm content, it feels like it doesn't come with the condition of pleasing somebody else.
Wow. And I imagine if somebody in the circle was to say, I feel content, the expressions, because I presume what you're saying about this is when somebody checks in with an emotion, everybody embodies that emotion. Is that what it is? They
Yeah.
offer it,
Yes.
mirror it back. So
Yeah.
if someone says happy, everyone mirrors back what happiness is supposed to look like. Whereas if somebody said
Right.
content, I imagine everyone might have a different kind of a body language to go with contentment, or a different reference point within them. They'll have to really look inside and be like, what
Yeah.
would
I
that
mean,
look like or feel like?
especially if they're four. But, but let me give you an example, right? Like if somebody says, I'm feeling angry or grumpy, the reaction in the room becomes a bit distant. It's interesting. So, or it becomes hostile in a performative way, by the way, not in an actual way. But
Mm.
if you're 4 or 5 years old and you're looking around a room and you say that you're feeling angry and you see that anger being mirrored back to you,
Mm.
suddenly you want to choose happy, even though that's not maybe how you feel.
Wow. God, that would be such an interesting exercise to do with adults as well. We should
Mm,
do that sometime.
mm,
Um, I don't know if you remember this, but when we were all in the hospital with Dad and he was in his final, we were all on the final walk with him. I remember, because I was trying to, being me, I was trying to kind of like get a sense of his experience, knowing that he was dying. And the way we all took turns
mm.
doing the overnight with him. So on one of my nights, I said to him, how do you feel about leaving? Is what I said. I didn't say dying. How do you feel about leaving? Or like, what? How do you feel? And he said, I'm not happy. He said, but I'm not sad either. I'm content. And I remember just that hit me like a ton of bricks because it was not what I expected. I don't know what I expected, but I didn't expect for him to have discerned that much, kind of like found
Yeah.
his emotional place on the spectrum. I guess I maybe expected sadness and contentment. I don't think is without sadness or sorrow, or it's almost like if I'm happy, it's to the exclusion maybe of sadness or whatever might lie on
Yeah.
the other side of that. But you can be content. Contentment can hold all of it. Is what it seemed to be for me because he said, I'm not happy, obviously, but I'm not sad either. I'm content.
Mm. Didn't he say at
Which is
one point,
at
sorry, fella, go
peace.
ahead. At peace.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't he say at one point, I'll miss yous rather than we'll miss him, but I'll miss yous?
No, that was Johnny Burke.
Oh, he used to tell the story of that. That's
Yes,
right.
yes. Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah. And
Johnny
Dad used to
Burke's,
be
because it was,
fascinated by that.
yeah. And he was definitely in the room, let's say, during that thing, probably because he modeled for Dad on
Mm.
some level what it was like to be aware that you're leaving. You know,
Oh,
what do you
yeah.
say when you are the one
I
who's leaving?
know.
What do you say? Yeah, I'll miss you. Wow.
Yeah.
So, anyway,
I
wah,
know.
wah, wah, wah.
If they could see me now, this little. Okay, see, there I am now. I'm performing happiness now to make the listeners not crash their cars into the ocean as they listen to the
Yeah,
podcast.
let's let's change the mood, which actually brings us uh, very well. It's a very good segue to our conversation because I wrote an article this week on Substack, the title of which is "Are you a happiness hero?" and the
Mm.
subtitle is "And do you feel a little dead inside?"
Well,
Here's why.
yeah.
And I kind of went on to share that for years I operated from an unconscious contract, which is if I do what they want, whoever they is, but if I do what they want, I'll make them happy. And if I make them happy, they will love me, which is a very big realization in my world, let's say, because it was almost like I have to manage other people's emotions in order for me to get what I want or in order
Mm.
for me to feel safe. And therefore, that kind of belief underneath is almost like it turns you into a happiness hero, the person who sweeps in, the person who absorbs tension, the person who smooths things over, who fixes problems, takes on extra burdens, and ends up in this kind of like endless depleting cycle of giving, 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 and not really even realizing that we're doing it, and also not realizing that there is a cost, and the cost being when you make, being a hero your full-time job. In other words, when you make smoothing life over for everybody else, trying to solve everyone else's problems or make them happy or take them out of the emotions that they're in that are hard for you, when you make that your full-time job, your own happiness never makes the list.
Hmm.
And how that sucks not just for you but for everybody, which is the whole idea behind your happiness is a gift, which is the theme of the Substack, that which is basically the online blog slash magazine that I am writing. Yeah, so it's like, why should you care? Why should you invest? Why should you pay attention to this? It's because your happiness, or lack thereof, your internal state, in other words, has an impact on others. And so putting your happiness, as we've defined it, as kind of living in alignment and being able to sleep at night, basically
Hmm.
content, even though you know you're dying, because we all are.
Oh God.
Um, you know. So anyway, what do you think of that? You read the article, did you?
I did. I read the article and it resonated deeply with me as, a people pleaser all my life.
Mm,
Um, and I think the nature of my work as well, I do tend to be a happiness hero and kind of catering to um, an audience a lot of the time. And, it's important that I deliver to my audience in order, to make a living. But of course, there's that other underlying part of it that's, myself, beyond my work.
mm,
You know, I I find as I do get older and I trust myself and my product more and more as I get older, I do see myself pleasing less,
mm,
not going as far as I might have gone to, guarantee someone's happiness. Remember, we talked about years ago when I was doing stand up comedy, and I'd always focus on that
mm,
one person in the room who wasn't laughing. And I would literally sit and say, how can I change my entire act that has made all the other people in the room laugh to make you laugh? Like
mm,
that's going to be the key to my success. And really, it's the key to a demise at the end of the day. Um,
mm,
I had a situation this weekend that was extremely validating around, this and kind of equating overextending ourselves to worthiness and being liked. And, I my my business is like I'm only as good as my last show. I'm
mm,
only as good as the last class that I taught. And I forget that I have already built my reputation enough to actually be human in what I do.
mm.
That it's okay to have a shit day. It's okay to have a shit week. It's okay to maybe not have the best of a show, that people are not going to leave me because of that. But this
Yeah.
past weekend, we had a massive snowstorm in New England, and we rent a theater out of a middle school in the city where I live here. And the city declared a state of snow emergency, and an ordinance went into place to close all buildings on the Sunday, which would have been our final show of the production. Now, we double cast our shows, which means that each cast gets two shows each. This meant that one cast was only getting one show. And these are kids who have worked tirelessly for 3 months, and then their show weekend basically gets cancelled. And it was devastating. So I was dealing with, trying to keep them upbeat for the shows that they did have. And also, I had this this kind of ruminating inside me saying, people are going to blame me for this. I'm not able to do anything about this. The decision has been taken out of my hands, but this could affect my business. People would think I didn't work hard enough to come up with a solution. All of that happened. And when the Sunday rolled around and I woke up and you know, I just kind of gave into what was happening. I handed it over. I said, this is a
Mm.
decision that was taken out of my hands. And, you know, if I overextend myself and try to make this happen elsewhere, which is just impossible. If you saw the size of the set, first of all, there's no way we can just take a set down and re-erect it somewhere. And it's very frustrating when people think that that's a possibility. When people are like, "Oh,
Mm.
can you not just do the show somewhere else?" If they
Yeah.
knew the labor that went into just setting the show up. Anyway, long story short is I decided that morning, because we were going to be at a financial loss, not performing that day. We were losing ticket sale money, concession money. We do raffles. We were losing all of that money, and we still had to pay all of the bills. We weren't getting refunded for anything.
Mm.
And I decided to post a campaign, and I called it the performance cancellation fund. And I put it out there into my mailing list and on social media. And part of me felt, oh my gosh, you're asking people for something and you're not giving anything back. And what happened, which is not true, by the way,
Yes,
what
exactly.
what happened blew my mind. People came out of the woodwork to support. We ended up exceeding our fund goal in 3 hours. I
Wow.
got the most beautiful messages of support and love. And it was just this aha moment of, I'm sitting at home, I'm not on stage performing for this acknowledgement, and I'm not necessarily making anyone happy today, but people are showing up because I've done enough. I've done enough. I am enough. I don't
Yeah.
have to put my tap shoes on consistently and do a dance in order to be seen as enough and
Yeah.
worthy and appreciated. And it was a
Mm.
huge moment of validation for me, because
Mm.
I am constantly, if I'm doing a birthday party for some kids, I'm like, so I have this, and this, but maybe I'll get that as well. And I'll throw this in too. When
Yes.
even just one of the 10 things that I'm doing would have been enough.
Yes.
So I am still absolutely battling and struggling with the habit of overextending and offering more than I need to.
Yeah.
But I'm
Yeah.
aware now,
It's
and the
almost
awareness.
yeah, it's almost an apology, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, it very much is. Yeah.
It's and a defense mechanism, it's self-preservation, it's all these things like, and what I know about you is you're never not giving. Like
Mhm.
you know, and we fall into this idea that the transactional is this thing in the moment, as if there is no kind of something established. And it's also for you, I presume, a lesson in receiving. And beyond the transaction that is the play in this moment, there is also the value of relationship, of that you have built up over time, like, and they are as invested too. And so, like, when everybody comes to the cause and is like, well, yeah, let me contribute to this, it goes to show you how much you have banked, you know?
Yes. And another part of this weekend that stood out for me, we were doing, it's not a comedy that we were doing. We were doing the musical Jesus Christ Superstar, which is far from, a funny show. But I had also gone through an awful lot in my personal life in the last 4 weeks dealing with a situation. And I I came to this show weekend unable to wear my usual mask of everything is okay. And I actually couldn't do it. So I thought I was doing it, and I started getting texts from some of my students' moms who I'd be close to. And I felt so vulnerable because one of them said, "Hey, I was talking to one of the other moms, and we noticed that you're a bit off, and we're just wondering, is everything okay? And can we support you?" And it was a scary moment, but it was also so liberating to show up that weekend in my true, authentic,
Mm.
state without having to make the effort to put on a big clown face as I normally would. And instead of people saying that's not good enough, people reached out to say, how can I help? How can I
Yeah.
support? And that was really important for me to witness and experience too.
Oh my God, it's so true. It's like there's a phrase I heard one time, it was toxic self-reliance.
Oh,
Um, and also this and I know where you're coming from, and it's when we are our most vulnerable that it is the most scary because, when I went through my thing over whatever it was, there was a 5 year period there in my 40s where I was dealing with, some mental health stuff that was not being addressed, and I just wasn't stabilized or medicated and all that. And I was just in such a state of overwhelm, constant overwhelm. I had overshot the runway on stress, and I was in a state of distress. And and I had no ability to regulate it either because it was, I needed medication. And in that time, it brought out the absolute worst in me, the absolute worst in me. And I remember saying to Terry, my husband, like, I wouldn't blame you for leaving. Like basically I gave him my
yeah.
blessing
Yeah.
to fuck off because if I was
Yeah.
in your, and because what I was saying in my mind was because if it was me,
Mm,
I would not. I could not, love. Like, in other words, I need you to be okay in order for me to love you and be around you. And when you're not okay, my discomfort with that. So, but what I learned on the other end is that like he didn't leave and he had no intention of leaving and he was like he was baffled at this. Like he kind of looking at me as if to say like, are you all right? Like, why would you even think that way? But that was how I was kind of thinking. It's like, if I'm not, in other words, I need to be easy to love. I need to make it very easy for you
mm.
to love me, to pay
Wow.
me, to work with me. It has to be easy for you. And what I'm really saying to him then is like, I don't trust you to fight for this. I say it to my clients. I don't trust you to fight for that. I don't trust you to bring anything to the table. I don't trust you, or I don't expect you, or whatever it is. Like, I am not allowing you to have any investment on this. I'm like basically treating everybody like an entitled customer. And if there's, a fly in the soup, they're going to turn the table over, literally turn it upside down, wreck the place and storm out and leave me
Mm,
traumatized
mm,
in your wake. That's
mm.
kind of the nervous system
Yeah.
that that I have, or maybe we have, and it's a really weird thing. I also think that it's part of our generational legacy that we're breaking.
Hmm.
And having grown up, I'm really just kind of like allowing this to be part of my story now. Is this idea of you know, growing up with a performing dad, and
Hmm.
it makes sense that we would have such concern about the audience. It would make sense that we always have a consciousness about an audience and keeping an audience happy, and also one of the things that I'm realizing is the need in me, or the perceived need in me, for applause and recognition as proof that what I'm doing is worthwhile or worth something.
Hmm.
And, you know, 40 odd years of watching that's how our dad did it, up on stage, and the feedback was instant, it was immediate, it was applause, it was
Hmm.
all of these things. And I realize now that that has actually imprinted itself on me. And on some level, I'm out here looking for an audience who will applaud and who I'm looking for that validation. I'm not in the same, I don't do my thing the same way dad did. I don't, have a stage. You do have that kind of, you're literally on a stage. So yeah, I'm just kind of like allowing that to come in as something that I take into account and say, gosh, yeah, there was, there's something there about the performance of this and the
Hmm.
waiting for the applause and the necessity of it in order to fulfill me or validate me that what I'm doing here is worthwhile.
And then not letting too much time go before you're looking for it again, or you're setting up a scene just to kind of almost test the waters, check the temperature.
Hmm.
That's me between shows. It's like we'll have a
Hmm.
show and then we have to wait several months until the next show. And, you know,
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
you mentioned generational things there, Amanda. And
Mm.
another thing, and it does come into the kind of being enough or doing enough. So my staff, for the most part, would be, say, a generation after me,
Yeah.
right? So they're at least a decade younger than me. And I say that because, like you said, each generation has its own, shit show. And it is up to us to break, the mold with that. So I would say the millennial generation. And what's next? Is Gen X after millennial? I am Gen X.
We're
Anyway,
we're Gen X, Gen Z.
yeah. So Gen Z, I think it's Gen X, millennial, and then Gen Z. Because I know that
Yeah.
my kids are Gen Z. So anywho, um, millennial generation, at least from my experience, right? I remember, um, you know, even just last year, say, and I say last year because it has shifted since. But last year, when my staff would tell me that they weren't available after a certain time, or they
Mm.
have office hours, and they're like, okay, so I'll be available till 5, and then I won't be available again till 9 o'clock the next morning. And I would feel this sense of resentment bubbling up, like, who the fuck do you think you are? Do you realize that I answer emails at 9 and 10 o'clock at night? And if I wake up to take a piss at 2 o'clock in the morning, I check to see if anyone fucking needs me, and you're sleeping. You're taking care of yourself. You're putting yourself first. And
Yeah.
so the reason I
I've
share
had
this is
that.
because, right, that that resentment is such a me problem and not a them problem. And what it has turned into now is admiration and inspiration.
Yes.
So I now have taken a leaf out of their book because they know that the work that they get done in those few hours is enough. It's also, the time they're getting paid for. We're also doing way too much for way too little, right? They have a
Mm-hmm.
different set of self worth and self value. And, you know, they stop after a certain amount of time and they say, okay, now I need to take 3 days off. 3 fucking days off. Three,
Who are
like
you?
seven.
Who are you? Jesus? Are you going to fucking resurrect now as well?
Oh, so my point being that, it very much is a generational thing. And I do take inspiration from other, generations who, and just people and that's not to say that those generations don't have, their own issues that, they
That we
struggle with.
gave them.
And yeah, oh, no doubt. But I do know that they are absolutely breaking a mold that it's
Yeah.
taken us a long time to break. You
Yeah.
know, they
Yeah.
are
You're,
saying, nope, not doing that. This is enough. This is all I can offer. Need to put myself first. And, it's
yeah.
fucking admirable.
It's that quiet quitting thing, It's like, I'm here to do the job I'm paid for and not to try and earn anything else, that really can't be earned, like respect. If you don't respect me, well, then that's a you problem. It's not,
Hmm.
it has nothing to do with how I'm showing up here. Um, but the resentment piece is such a flag, and it is such a, like, how do you know you're giving too much? So I have a story about
Hmm.
2015 or 16. It was either the Christmas of 2015 or the January of 2016. I went to see Liz Gilbert in Dublin. She was on her
Letters of
big
love, is
magic.
it? Letters of,
Yes, that's her Substack. Letters from Love. But she's,
yeah. Oh,
Eat,
okay.
Pray, Love was her book. Yeah, she wrote Eat,
Yes.
Pray, Love. But this was her big magic book tour. That was a huge book for her. And at the end of the event, she did, like, during it, it was like she got interviewed. It was, and she took questions from the audience and all of this stuff. And at the end of the night, she announced to the audience that there would be no meet and greet afterwards, right? No book signings. She thanked everyone for coming, but she said, this is hard for me, but this is going to be it. There will be no more after this. And I know you probably came here with the expectation that you would meet me. And Melanie, when I tell you that I fell out with that woman in that instant, I
Hmm.
wanted to, if I'd had tomatoes, I would have thrown them at her. I was
Yeah.
in, like, I was irrationally angry. I was
Yeah.
incensed. And I also then, of course, in my mind, I called up the image of Arda standing in his sweaty gig suit
Yeah.
after being on stage for 90 minutes, one time in particular, after having surgery to have toes amputated, and was still hooked up to a fucking drain going on stage. And he would just, man would
Mm.
unhook it. He'd go up and do his gig, come back down,
Mm.
stand for 90 minutes meeting and greeting people, and then she'd hook him back up to the drain, and he'd probably end up with pneumonia. How sick he made himself.
Well, that's it. It cost him his health.
It cost a lot, and but that kind of was in me. That was like, well, that's how you're supposed to do it,
Hmm. Yeah.
and it also created in me an expectation and an entitlement. I was like, well, hold on, I came all the way here to see you tonight. I paid for a ticket.
Yeah.
And I expected more. That used to, I called it the disease of more.
Mm.
Whether I am giving it or whether I am expecting it, the
Hmm.
big thing is more. And so the not enough was actually coming from me. Like, in other words, the killer is inside the house. And
Mm.
this idea of more, I felt like she owed me something. And I remember leaving that night and I was like, I'm not buying her stupid book. I'm not reading her book. And I couldn't even hear the woman's name. For years afterwards, I would bristle at the mention
Mm.
of her name. And
Yeah.
I love Liz Gilbert, and I enjoy everything that she puts out there. Like, I've gotten over it, in other words, but I had a massive reaction, and it was an entitlement, and it was rooted in my own internalized beliefs that, if someone's getting paid, if someone's getting validated, if someone's getting my attention, my effort, any effort I go to see them, they are obligated to give and keep giving. And on that night, she basically verbalized a boundary.
Hmm.
And rather than seeing it as a boundary and honoring it and admiring her for the boundary, I went away incensed by it. And I realized, almost 10 years later, I was like, oh, this is why I'm burnt out, because I don't have boundaries. I can't not
Hmm.
overgive. I'm
Yep.
afraid if I stop overgiving, that I will have no value, that people will just leave if they're not happy, as if me giving was what was keeping people happy. I have no control over, like what I've said before about the audience. Like, we don't just give something to an audience and then they sit there like a, brick of salt, and we transform them into happy people. They must participate.
Yeah.
They must actually, you know, they must actually do something in order, like, there is an exchange happening here. I can't make you happy, but I can give you cause to laugh. I can give you cause to think, but I can't make you do any of those things. You have to be willing. You have to come to the table willing
Hmm.
to take what I'm offering and make it yours.
Can you imagine the hours and hours that we could reclaim if we stopped over giving, overselling, you know. Um, a similar
Mhm.
situation happened to me with Steve Martin and Martin Short. We're
I
doing a
remember,
show in
yes.
Boston,
Mm.
and myself and Frank went backstage. There was only a handful of people there, actually, which was surprising, but I had worked in that theater before, so I knew where the backstage was, and it's kind of hard to find, you know. It was maybe 20 of us there, and Steve Martin came out of the side door and literally was pulled into a car and he drove away. And that same feeling of how fucking dare you? Like, you know, to this now I have gotten over it, but Frank, at the mention of Steve Martin's name, oh, the rant. I'll never fucking like that fella ever again after what he did to us. You know? He wouldn't even give us the fucking time of day, you know. And I felt the very same that night because I was like, what would
Yeah,
it take for you to have stopped and signed 15 programs, you know? And
yeah,
in all fairness, unlike how graciously Liz Gilbert, you know, announced it, there was no announcement, and there wasn't really as much even as a hello and thank you for coming. He just got straight into the car. But what we didn't even consider was the fact that he could have been unwell, or that he look at me looking for a reason for it. See, even that's
yeah,
not
yeah,
healthy.
yeah.
He did what he came to do. Nowhere on the ticket did it say see you backstage, Frank and Mel. But like, you know, it's I mean, did Liz Gilbert in any part of the promotion of that tour announce that she would meet people? See,
No,
it's our
no,
expectations.
it
Our
really is. And
expectations are as ridiculous as, you know, our overextensions.
yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. Oh, stop it. Dad used to say kindness costs nothing. And while that is true, and and I know you are, like we are big proponents of kindness. For well, about 40 years, I confused kindness with niceness, which basically is code for people pleasing. People
Yeah.
pleasing costs nothing. Actually, that's a lie. People pleasing costs you your joy. People pleasing costs you your rest. It costs you your dignity. It costs you your self worth, your self respect. It costs you your peace. And people only who only value you for what they're getting are the kind of people who will never be satisfied anyway. Just like I couldn't have been satisfied. Doesn't matter how much Liz Gilbert gave from the stage. I was unhappy because I went there unconsciously believing that she owed me something. She
Mm-hmm.
owed me something because I'm here. Like, how arrogant.
Did she owe you something because of how much you've given everyone else? Like, do we expect this of people because of how much we give? Would it be the same if we were confident in just being enough? Would we then be the type of people who would say, yeah, they've given enough too? Is it a reflection of ourselves?
Mhm. I think that what it in that moment, with hindsight, I did not recognize a boundary when I saw it. I did not speak boundary. And so what I saw was rejection. That's what I felt. I
Mm.
felt rejected. I felt denied. I felt scuppered. I took it personally, like as if this was some personal affront to me. And it's almost like, you know, y y the version of Liz Gilbert in my head, like I basically confused her with Mickey Mouse, you know, like the character breakfast. You know, you go to Disneyland and you get to, you know, if you pay
Yeah.
a little bit extra, you get to go for the breakfast seating where the characters come out and do the whole performing thing so that, you know, everybody can have that experience. And I literally confused Liz Gilbert with Mickey Mouse. And then I realize now on the other side of burnout that I have been Mickey Mouse,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Same.
you know, giving people and not even giving people, but giving too much access, like having like basically having no front door. I've been living in, imagine living in a house with no front door.
You've been living in a barn.
Yeah.
Mm.
People could just walk in and out of your house and then you're getting mad about it. Like, what the fuck are you all doing in my house? Oh, sorry, I just, there was a no door and a sign outside that said, come on in, take what you
Mm.
want.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Fuck.
no limits. And then you
No,
wonder why
no,
you're
no,
resentful.
no, 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 there's no limits. Sorry, I just had to bring a little bit of happiness back.
Throwback to the 90s, early 90s.
Okay, who sang it?
Too unlimited.
Yes! I am impressed. I am impressed.
Yeah. So, how do we break the happiness hero cycle?
Be a
Well, I'll
selfish
start
cunt.
close. Yeah, boundaries basically, you know, and a kind of a willingness to sit in the discomfort that some people will have expectations that we will fail to meet and that they will be disappointed and that that disappointment will not be our job to eradicate, just like my disappointment was not Liz Gilbert's job to manage. My emotions, my expectations were not her job to manage. And she modeled that before I could appreciate it.
Hmm.
And I actually had so I just recorded prior to this podcast today, I recorded an episode of the other podcast that I co host. I co host with another Mel, would you believe? Melissa Kelly, and the podcast is We're Sober, Now What? And we talk about all things sobriety. And I was just saying to her, I had sent her a message over the weekend, and I said, it was a Saturday, and I was kind of saying to her about, it was something about this week and our scheduling. And she responded on Monday morning. And I noted it because I was like, well, fair fucking play to you for having office hours, you know? And I said
Yes,
it to her
I'm.
today.
Oh,
Yeah. And I said it to her today on the recording. I said, I noticed that you had office hours, that you responded to me within office hours. I said, and I just want to like appreciate that and acknowledge it. And basically, what a different response I had because 8 years ago, somebody having a boundary resulted in me, going home and making a voodoo doll and stabbing it 1,200 times a night. And and this week it resulted in a kind of like,
it's an
fair play
inspiration.
to you. Yeah.
This is what I mean when I see my staff having those boundaries. I have gone from resenting to literally being inspired. And Amanda, this is funny. I'm going to have to admit this. I guess I'm in a fake it till I make it stage because I've started to pretend that I have boundaries and maybe it'll eventually get there. And I'll give you an example. So I'll be in bed at night, promising myself that I'm not going to scroll for 2 hours. And then at 10:30, an email will come in from some entitled cunt who thinks that I should, respond to them. And by the way, maybe they don't. Maybe that's just when they get sent it. They didn't say, please answer before midnight tonight. And I will respond, but I will schedule the email to go out at 8 a.m. on Monday morning.
That's fair.
Right? So it's a step in the right direction because I don't want them to think that they have access to me at 11 p.m. on a Friday night. So
Hmm.
it is a boundary in a sense. What I should in fact do is wait until Monday morning and use my energy then. But I'm at least making a bit of an effort to protect myself.
Well, do you know what? That's worth honoring and respecting because, here's the thing. I do that too. I have done that where it's like, okay, I'm going to answer this now in the moment. Um, but absolutely not going to send it because, we teach people how to treat us kind of a thing. And I'm not going to, um, you know, I definitely don't want someone to see or know that. Now, there are two things I might do in that moment, which is, as you have done, just answer it now, but schedule it for whenever. I did one the other day. I had a call on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and I scheduled the follow up email to go out the following Monday. So I dealt with it in the moment, but I scheduled it ahead of
Yes.
time. Now, Or that's one option. Or the other option, what I might do is if that email comes in and I am on, and I do happen to check it at 10 o'clock at night, what I could do is I'll snooze that email until Monday morning at 8 a.m. so that
Yes, I
it's
love that.
represented to me. Now, the
Yes.
difference between those two things, I wouldn't call that a pretend boundary, Mel. I would call
Mm,
that a boundary because
mm,
you are considering, what the perception is on the other side in terms of your availability. But sometimes Monday morning is too busy for me to deal with it. So I'm going to deal with it now rather than Monday. So
mm.
I think that's a perfectly fine boundary to have, you know?
A tip I would give to anybody who's scheduling anything, um, a few days ahead, is to not include information that could change between Friday and Monday. For instance, a person had reached out to me and their child had missed the class because their dog was sick and they went to the vet. And I scheduled the email to go out on Monday to say, oh, hope Rover is okay. And that's no problem. And blah, blah, blah. Well, Rover fucking died on Saturday. And I had received word of that, but I forgot that I scheduled the email. And I even responded to the text to say, oh, I'm sorry to hear about that. And then the email went out on Monday just fucking asking if by any miracle Rover had been resuscitated. So just, don't
So
promise any information.
So now Rover's Jesus.
Yeah.
Um,
It's been a whole weekend of Jesus for me.
oh, stop. Yeah, yeah, that is true as well. Yeah, being careful. Well, it's the same is true for, when you're recording anything up front. It's kind of like don't mention the time
Yeah.
we're in, just try and keep the
Yeah.
the information generic. Um,
Gobble, gobble. Happy Thanksgiving. And then we released the episode in February.
Yeah. So yes, this idea of being a happiness hero is, basically somebody who comes in and rather than sit in the discomfort of somebody else's reaction to you, rather than sit in the discomfort of your own boundary or their boundary or whatever it is, like coming in and removing any friction at all, and making them try with the kind of like irrational belief that you are somehow making life easier for other people um, at your own expense. And your massive flag is a kind of a resentment which can simmer beneath the surface for a very long time before you'll actually pay attention to it. And then here's the thing about resentment: when you're holding that kind of resentment or you're keeping score, and you've done all this, you've gone out of your way or over delivered, the minute they don't reciprocate, it's like bombs over Amsterdam. That's it now. You're so fucked. I am going to like a rampage. So
Mm-hmm.
the reaction is going to be huge and it's going to be personal and it's going to be um, completely irrational and out of proportion to the perceived slight. And the slight is literally somebody saying, do you know what? I'm choosing self care over the management of your emotions. And
Yes.
you know and like I should have in that moment, if it was me today, I probably would have stood up in that theater and given her a round of applause and said fuck yeah, like that, like thank you for normalizing boundaries, thank you for normalizing enough, thank you for drawing a line in the sand and saying this is what I am giving, this is what I'm here to do. And anything beyond that, if I decide to give, is an act of generosity, but not an obligation. I am no longer obligated to empty myself for fear of you going home thinking anything other than how great I am.
There are people who will go to their graves and never have that realization and that awareness that you have had. That's a gift back to Liz and also to you.
Yeah, yeah. But I wonder, will you go, if you go to your grave never having realized that, do you also go to a grave with your laundry list of resentments and go to St. Peter at the gate of heaven, you'll be saying, oh, see these fuckers, don't let them in because they're blah, 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 blah. So, you know what I mean? You,
Mm.
that kind of a thing. You go to your grave not just without ever having realized this, but you definitely, I don't think, could you die in peace? Because at the end of the day, that's what
Mm.
this is about. Being able to say, you know what? I'm not taking anyone with me, or I'm not I'm not leaving here with a kind of a bold list, or a,
Hmm.
like I always kind of revert back to this idea of the characters on stage, and writing characters that get booed. That's how I see resentment, you know.
The
I
villains.
start, yeah, I start to write parts that if it was a panto, you would totally be getting booed.
Mm.
Mm. So, yes, the this episode was brought to you by today's sponsor, which is your happiness is a gift. That is the message, and also beyond that, the depth, the defining of what happiness means to you. Get out of other people's definitions. Get out of other people's expectations. Like stop trying to engineer happiness in other people's lives, or you mightn't think that you're engineering happiness, but you certainly are trying to engineer the absence of hardship, which is another form of, you think that that's how happiness is created. Happiness is not the absence of hardship. Um, and in the process, you're only creating hardship for yourself.
Mm.
Um,
Did I notice in that article, Amanda, that you offered a journal prompt? I think that would
yes,
be, I love a good prompt.
yeah. So, just to mention that the article we're referring to is on Substack, and just a very, very brief thing. So, Substack is for all the world. It's like an online hub that blends website with blogging and all of that thing. So, that's how I've deleted my website and all of that. And so, on my Substack, it's called "Your Happiness is a Gift." And when you subscribe as a free subscriber, what it just means is that you get on the email list, and then you'll also receive these episodes to your inbox. If you upgrade your subscription, the $5 a month or something like that, you will get the prompts. It's where you will get, all the handouts that we've been given. Yeah, this is the invitation here is for you to just like consider this. Like, where are you exhausting yourself to keep others happy? Like, where are the resentments in your life? And really look at those. Like, who are you resenting, or what are you resenting, or how are you maybe bristling? Um, how do I know this is a thousand questions, but like, what is your relationship with happiness? What's your relationship with boundaries? What's your relationship with other people who protect their space, hence their happiness? All of those things, like what we say about the rest. Like, are you incensed when somebody decides not to work on a Sunday? Or when somebody clocks off at 5 p.m. and doesn't, turns off their phone? Like, what is your relationship with other people's boundaries? And in terms of being a hero, you know, where are you being a hero? Where are you bidding for somebody else to be without the thing that you've decided is so bad? Whether that's, inconvenience, hardship, having to work a part-time job, whatever it is, like where are you getting in the way?
Mhm.
Um, and to really look at that, and because all heroes, and here's the big one, all heroes are really victims. They're
Wow.
really, yeah, all heroes are victims. They just are in denial about it.
Mm.
Yeah. And wherever there is a victim, there is a villain. So you're caught up in something there. Anyone who's being a hero is automatically drawing victimhood and persecution into their life. It's going to be part of your drama.
Mm.
That's just the law of the land.
It's
You're
kind of
living in a drama. Yeah,
liberating in a way, not to have to,
yeah,
seek heroic status.
yeah. Just be, as you said, just be a human.
Hmm. And
Let
let that be
Superman be
enough.
the hero. Yeah, 100%. I just want, I want nothing to do with heroes. I don't want any heroes in my life anymore. I just don't. I don't want
Mm.
to be held, you know, I just don't want to prop your ego up like that anymore. And I don't want to lead with that anymore. So I'm taking a leaf out of Liz Gilbert's book, and there is a literal line now where that is enough. That's what I offer. That's what I promised. That's what I delivered. Anything else, there's another kind of tier for that.
Hmm.
That's another ticket. I just bought concert tickets, and you have the different levels. You have, the concert ticket, and then you have the VIP experience.
Yep.
Which is very interesting. When you look at Dad's thing, everybody got the VIP experience.
I know. Oh, I
There was
know.
only ever there was only ever one ticket.
That's it.
And let people choose. Let people choose. That's the other thing. Like, some people will be satisfied with no, I'll just go to the gig. I don't need the VIP experience. Like, and then other people, they'll be just like, I can't miss it. I have to meet them. I have to have the VIP experience, and they'll do it. And
Hmm.
let that be their decision. I just think it's a much healthier way to function, given that I know how a lack of boundaries impacted me, like, in a really negative way, and everyone around me.
Fact.
Fact. What's this the kids say? Cap?
Loki. Oh God, Cap is so
No
last year,
cap.
Amanda. No,
Not
all
cap.
that.
Oh,
That's all.
no
Everything's
cap.
low key now. Low key.
Oh, okay.
Low
So
key.
I'm low key done with
Yes.
the overgiving. Cap. No
Legit.
cap. But bussing.
No caps. Like
All
Riz.
caps. That'll
Rizzy.
probably be me.
Rizzy Riz.
I'll be talking to the kids, and I'll be like, "You get me?" All caps.
Oh no,
Anyway.
you would be fired as an auntie if you do that in my house. Just so you know, I'll get you up to speed. All right, chicken. We'll look at. I think that's a lot of resourceful
Hmm.
stuff
Should we
for our
mention
listener to chew on. Yes, mention it.
the gig?
I'm so excited, and I started way too high. Yes. So, listener, listen up. I am boarding the Big Green Bird, aka Aer Lingus, it's the end of March to get home to my sister because on April 3rd, we are doing a live episode of the podcast. It's our live launch in
Hmm.
the Nina Art Centre in Nina in County Tipperary. And we would absolutely love nothing more than for you to be there. And I'll pass it over to you because you know more of the details.
Yes, it's an evening with us, as Mel said, and it is the live launch. It's going to be a bit of crack. The the
Crack is
title
not
of
drugs. American friends, just so
the
you should know us by now. Crack is fun. Please do not be 16-year-old Mel who landed in Jupiter, Florida as a resident alien asking where the best crack was. Crack
where's the
is fun. Where's the best crack around here? Oh my God. How
yeah.
old are you?
Yeah. So, yeah, what we will do in the show notes here is we will provide you with a click. We will provide you with a link that you can click, that we're kind of gathering some interest, so that you can kind of get on an email, that we can actually follow up with you when the tickets go live. The tickets will be €20, and it's like I think an 8 p.m. gig. Will be over and done with by 10 for sure. But we are definitely going to, it's about this topic. Your happiness is a gift, and we will have we'll have fun on the night, and just to feel good. And we will meet. We will meet and greet everybody. We will do the Mickey Mouse thing. No joking. We would just be delighted
That's
if you're
40
there.
euro.
Yeah, the VIP experience. That'll be
We're not
40
quite
euro,
there
and
yet.
yeah, it'll be 40 euro and your firstborn. Um, okay. So we'll leave it at that. We will include in the notes a link for you to click if you are interested in that, so we can gather a little bit of information and follow up on you. And apart from that, subscribe to our Substack. You can do that for free, or you can become a Happy Scribe member for $5 a month, which everybody gets all the articles and all. But for that extra €5 a month, you'll get all the journal prompts, you'll get all the handouts that we give out on this show. You will get more articles from me that are exclusive to helping you do the work. And you also will have access to a form that you can anonymously ask questions of us regarding any topic that we ever cover, or you can request topics that we haven't yet covered. And we will put that link in there too. So thanks for listening, and we shall see you next time. Bye.